Let's move on from David Tepper not answering questions to saying hello to Jonathan Jones, CBS Sports NFL insider, who will answer questions. JJ, what's up, man?
What's going on? I promise that I will answer some of your questions unless I don't like your questions, and then I'll beat around the bush. And if I don't want to answer a question from you, then I just won't call on you.
15 minutes? 15 minutes. I think he took 7 questions today.
Well, it was gonna be 10, right? And then they forced their way into 1 or 2 more, right?
So why even do a press conference?
Because you have to.
Yeah, I guess.
I'll let you speculate.
Yeah, thanks for letting me speculate.
That's good.
We're gonna get into that then. I feel like, and I started the podcast by saying this. You tell me if I'm off base. This feels more like a mutual parting of ways, a conscious uncoupling between David Tepper and Frank Reich.
I could understand if so. All right, how about this? When Matt Rule got fired, the building, there was relief in the building, right? No question about it. In talking with folks, there's not relief in the building that Frank Reich is fired, right? They didn't feel like they were under Frank Reich's thumb. They appreciated him as a person, as a human. They realized that things weren't going well, and it was a lot of people's fault. So if you want to say that maybe Frank is relieved, perhaps, but there's not that relief in the building, because I think very unfortunately for everyone with the Carolina Panthers organization, because there's not a specific thing outside of ownership that you can point to and fix. I think it's a crap. What are we going to do?
Okay. They need to invent a fast forward button, as I've been saying for the last 3 weeks, and just get through this season and try to make some better decisions in free agency, because they don't have any draft capital.
Well, I mean, is 24 going to be any better? I mean, it has to be better than this.
They have to score more than 16 points a game. Yeah, I mean,
sure, but I mean, does anyone, considering their lack of capital, considering the investments they've made into the offensive line that are regressing right now, considering the pieces at wide receiver, you just can't swap out 10 other guys on the offense, right? You're going to have to keep a lot of these pieces. Even in the best case scenario where you hit on everything, is this more than a 6-win team next year?
So that gets to the central question about David Tepper going forward. When he took over and he decided to move on from Ron Rivera, which I think everybody understood it was time for Ron Rivera to move on from the Panthers organization, trying to go in a new direction. Tepper famously talked about how, hey, man, are you willing to go through 5 years of suffering for 20 years of success? You know, this is a guy who, I guess, through osmosis feels like he's picked up things from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who made headlines by actually firing a coordinator in the middle of the year. I mean, that's a
first
big
time since 1941 in midseason.
Think about that, okay? But he actually has not executed on the very thing that he said from the jump. And instead, he's shown this impatience. So at this point, if you learn lessons, or if you're supposed to learn lessons, do you envision a scenario, or is there talk around the league that David Tepper is going to hire a coach and a general manager who are on the same page, clean slate, and then give it the exact time?
I think this was one of the biggest reasons why not to fire Frank Reich right now, was because what do you gain from firing him now versus what do you lose? And what you lose is any ability, if you're David Tepper, to look someone square in the face and have them believe you when you say, I am not impulsive, I am patient, right? If he gave him till the end of the season, I think a lot of people would look around and say that was a 1-2 win Carolina Panthers team. It didn't work out. Okay, you admitted your mistake and that's it. To fire him before the Denver Broncos fired Nate Hackett and before the Jaguars fired Urban Meyer,
right
after the Rule deal, and along with the Charlotte FC, and we can continue on, and what happened in Rock Hill, all of those things, you can't, no one cares what you did in the hedge fund world. You cannot look at anyone in the face in the sports realm and say, I'm patient. So this has knocked the Panthers' job down, I think pretty incredibly. And I do believe that the guy who is going to take this head coaching job is either going to do it for money and or that person truly believes in Bryce Young. Those are the two things you have to either believe both of them or at least one of them Otherwise, you cannot take this job.
Okay, so that's a two-pronged question that I can bounce off of here. So let's talk about the Panthers job in general. The general sentiment is there's only 32 of these jobs available, and everybody wants an NFL head coaching job. I agree with that on principle, and you can negotiate with a owner, be like, hey, man, I don't believe you. If you really want me, I need more guaranteed money. Everybody makes their money. Everything's all good. However, and I'm sure you're hearing this too, I thought it was pretty eye-opening hearing Adam Schefter yesterday on Monday Night Countdown talking about how, I think his word was bloodbath, in terms of how we're going to be dealing with all these openings in the NFL. So it's not so much that David Tepper's the problem, is that there's going to be a lot of availabilities. And it gets to your point about where does the Panthers job rank when you have 7 jobs available?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I hear hey, there's only 32 of these. And implicit in that is, well, you better take it if it's offered to you. There are bad jobs, right? You guys, both of you, considering your circumstances, had opportunities to take bad jobs. Hey, there's only a few of these out here.
Sure.
And you decided not to take them. And you decided to do this, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't have to do it. And so I do actually disagree with that entire theory, principle, and logic. Because you can take a job and then you can be in the job for 1 out of the 4 years of guaranteed money. And it's great that you have millions of dollars, but you are known and your family is branded for forever as you were a failure. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't know how much that's worth. And so I do disagree with that. It could be a bloodbath, right? I think any season we're between 6 and 8, I could see on the absolute low end, I could see 6 jobs being open. You know, I also saw Schefter, and obviously it is it's an estimation. It is an incredibly educated estimation that it could reach 9. I think if all the dominoes fall in the right way, if there's a retirement in there somewhere, that, yeah, we could get to 9. Mm-hmm. But that's even the point, right? In that, okay, there's only 32. Well, if there's 8 openings and you're good enough to get one of them, aren't you good enough to get one of the other 7 too?
Right.
As well? Or if it's not right for you this year, won't you still be good enough next year?
Which gets to the second part of this. Is Bryce Young enough of a sell for a coach to take the Panthers job? Because I think that's the other part of the equation. What is the general view? I mean, we can have our opinions. Fans can have their opinions. But the football knowers, what do they think of Bryce Young?
The football knowers, the majority of folks that I spoke to had Bryce as their top quarterback. Now, not every team is fully evaluating these quarterbacks coming out like the Carolina Panthers had to, right? So, I mean, if you have your quarterback already, if you're the Cleveland Browns, you're looking at the quarterbacks, but you're not spending a week in Alabama on the quarterback, right? But I do believe that the majority of the NFL had Bryce as the top guy. So and look, CJ's playing incredibly well. All that's good, fine, and well. Just like the Miami Dolphins found a guy who believed in Tua Tagovailoa when a lot of people did not, a lot of people around the league did not, and you may still not believe in him, but they're winning. Mm-hmm. And you found a coach who knows how to bring out the best in Tua. There are humans that exist who are really good at coaching who can get the Carolina Panthers job that I believe in Bryce Young. I do. Now, do those people want to go to Carolina and everything else that's involved there? To be determined. But I do believe, as evidenced by a couple of years ago, the Dolphins finding the guy who believed in Tua, there's going to be a very good coach who believes in Bryce Young.
Couple things. I think as the David Tepper apologist of the only one in the world, even Jerry Jones turned everything over to Bill Parcells. Like, he had a phase because everyone told him, hey, you're really fucking this thing up, dude. And what did he do? He went and got Bill Parcells. Mm-hmm. Even Daniel Snyder had a Joe Gibbs phase where he went, you know what? You're really fucking this thing up, dude. Go get somebody. And he hired Gibbs. So Tepper, I don't know who it is. Someone's going to say to him, hey, man, you're really fucking this thing up. And he's going to hire somebody. I'm marking it down right now. He's going to hire the nervous bird. He's going to hire Harbaugh. So because, to your point, though, JJ, to your point, if you're Shane Steichen, if you're Ben Johnson, if you're one of these young play callers, you're going, buddy, I ain't coming to rescue you. It's got to be someone of that stature, the Gibbs, the Parcells, that it also becomes very clear to Tepper, okay, you know a whole lot more about football than I do. So that's what I'm gonna do.
So I know exactly where you're going with this. And in fact, I've spent the last 26 hours talking to people about this. And here's how I can see it happening and not happening, because your logic is sound. It's that David Tepper has tried any number of ways, right? He had the veteran, respected head coach in Ron Rivera. He brings in Matt Rule, and he brings his buddies from Temple and Baylor in, and he's going to revolutionize everything with a 7-year contract, right? And we got one over on the Giants. Okay, that doesn't work. So now we're going to bring in this veteran coaching staff, this all-star coaching staff with 200 years of experience, and this is going to work. And no, it doesn't. Also consider that they've tried every single avenue to figure out the quarterback position, right? Everything. Sam Darnold, the bridge quarterback in Bridgewater, Baker Mayfield, bringing back Cam, all of those things. So now, as Harbaugh was calling the Carolina Panthers last year, I reported this, and there was not mutual interest because David Tepper and the Panthers organization had just come off of Matt Rule and a coach who ran things and people and morale that was really down. They didn't want anything to do with it. Now, every successive year of your ownership, you lose more games, you win fewer games, and you may not care about all of the warning signs that come with Harbaugh and bringing him into your organization and giving him control. You're tired of losing. You're tired of standing up there and ignoring some reporters' questions and only taking questions for 10 and a half minutes, and you just want to win and you don't care what the morale is. Under that sort of logic, I can see it happening. Where it was never going to happen 11 months ago, could it happen now? Why not?
All right. Who made the decision on Bryce Young?
Everybody.
This keeps coming up that, well, no, Frank always wanted CJ. Oh, somebody got overruled. Definitively. How did that happen?
So, Scott Fitterer and Frank Reich, they kind of joked back in the spring that they were playing their cards close to their vest and they didn't want to say it to one another. And then one time they walk into the room and they kind of look at each other and it's like, it's Bryce, right? It's Bryce? Okay, all right, it's Bryce. Everyone in the building, maybe there was one person who didn't actually have voting power who thought CJ Stroud. Everybody thought it was Bryce. And now, did David Tepper also believe it was Bryce? And does, ownership, the guy who's always around, he wants Bryce. So could that impact a decision in some way, subconsciously or otherwise? Sure, I'm not going to discount that. But when Josh McCown is at the Ohio State Pro Day and CJ Stroud is throwing and he comes up to him and is like, hey, maybe we'll see you in Carolina in a couple months. Like, that's what coaches do with these young guys. They say those things, and maybe he meant it. I'm sure he did like CJ Stroud. Maybe Josh was the guy who wanted CJ Stroud. I don't know that. But that isn't proof because he said some encouraging words after a nice audition that they all wanted him. And
they were going to play basketball together. That's what it was.
Right.
I'll get you.
Now, what is working against David Tepper and why no one believes him is because of how meddlesome he has been. He has not earned the sort of benefit of the doubt. And so as soon as things start to pick up and like, hey, maybe Frank wanted someone else. And look, I'm in this football rumor mill every day, guys. And I get these texts and all of a sudden it's like, no, these rumors that go around the earth faster than the truth and all that stuff, like that is what has happened. But I can tell you in April and in May and in June, before we ever knew that CJ Stroud was going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year, that everybody in that building wanted Bryce Young.
Okay. About the rumor mill. And we can wrap up the conversation with this. I know you're busy. We always appreciate the time. As Joe and I were talking about earlier, it's so awesome to see you all growing up. Super Bowl promos.
Grown up.
Glasses on with the Vegas fountain, the Bellagio. You've seen the promo, right? JJ looking good, man. Looking good. Although you topped it with the Houston Oilers fashion show that you did not that long ago. Anyway.
It's tough being on a runway with Nate Burleson, I can tell you that.
I don't know, JJ, I've known you for a long time. David Tepper likes to talk about bringing all these shows and the pizzazz to Charlotte. No, you did that, Joe. You did that, JJ. You did that. All right, now here's the thing about the rumor mills, and you got your text messages going and all this other stuff. And we hear about David Tepper being this meddlesome owner. Aren't they all? I mean, isn't Jerry Jones in the same boat at this rate? It's the only difference between, say, Jerry Jones and David Tepper is that the Dallas Cowboys are the Dallas Cowboys, and that's America's team. They move the needle all the time. Because that's where I wanted to go with this. Is the bigger problem with the Panthers, not necessarily the owner, but the Panthers franchise itself in a city that does not just go like nuts for a football team?
Understand the question. There's certainly apathy. As someone who grew up outside of Charlotte, and loves the city of Charlotte, right? Unless the Charlotte sports teams are winning, it's going to be hard to fill up that stadium, right? I mean, there's no question about it. I now live in Boston. I go to Celtics games a lot, and like there's never ever like chants from the other team, right? And I would go cover Hornets and Bobcats games, and like Steph and LeBron and Kobe would come in, and like you would think you're in their home arenas,
right?
No question about it, right? But also, I don't think that the franchise is cursed. Right? Like it's
no. That's not where I'm going with it being cursed. What I'm getting at is there is culture in other cities. Like you say, you're in Boston, and we're having honest discussions, like real discussions about Bill Belichick and whether or not they're going to fire him mid-season, because that's the mentality. It's the mentality of, all right, he
did lose to Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, I know.
There's a rule, man.
Hey, the pizza, the pasta. Hey. So that's what I'm getting at. And you were in Charlotte for a long time. You grew up around there. Joe and I have been around here for a long time. We know how North Carolina sports tend to operate with the ebbs and flows of interest. And that's the worst thing that can possibly happen to a franchise, just like we've seen it with college athletics around here. It's the worst part of, I don't give a shit. That's the big issue that I think David Tepper has to overcome. Not that he's meddlesome, is that ultimately people go, man, I can spend my time doing something else rather than going to the Panthers on a Sunday.
Yeah, sure. Right. And I mean, who was around? Remember when they got rid of Cam and then Kuechly retired and then Thomas Davis went somewhere and then Greg Olsen went to the Seahawks, and like they had to keep McCaffrey and they had to pay McCaffrey, right? Even though the right move before they paid him was to trade him.
Sure.
That was the football move. And they didn't do it because they couldn't look the fan base in the eye and say, hey guys, all of your favorites from the last 5 years, they're gone.
Yeah.
And so, Bryce Young was supposed to be the guy. And if they had Bryce and a cohesive offensive system and scheme around him, and if they were 500, right, they'd be competing for the NFC South. Butts would be in the seats. I'm not even talking about being good, right? I'm just talking about beating the Tennessee Titans and moving to 5-6 on the season. They could be going to the playoffs right now, and you'd have this young, handsome quarterback that could sell jerseys. Yeah. But instead, they got the coach wrong because the owner got it wrong, and everything flowed from there. So, no, I mean, there's a very obvious common denominator. And you're right about the Jerry Jones, but you're also like, look at Jimmy Haslam, right? When he took over the Cleveland Browns a decade ago, he made so many of these same mistakes. And then he said, you know what? I'm going to let the football guys do this now. I'm going to come in when we're going to sign Deshaun Watson to a fully guaranteed contract. But other than that, you guys got it.
You bring up the Browns, you can bring up the 49ers as another example of this too. How many coaches did Jed York go through?
Sure, right.
Like a 3-year span,
including
Harbaugh, by the way. Yeah, forgot about the Harbaugh aspect of that with Jed York there. And now they've got Shanahan, and they got a team that looks like they can be, if provided they're healthy, be contending for a Super Bowl. I know Joe's got a ticket for that, so he's very much knocking on wood, because you want to bank your winnings on Christian McCaffrey and his health status. It's brilliant.
Nothing could go wrong.
Brilliant, Joe. Absolutely brilliant. All right, Jonathan, we appreciate the time, man. And it'll be an interesting 6 weeks left in this season. We'll talk to you later.
All right, fellas.